10 haunted winter horrors revealed. Spine-chilling tales of sinister secrets and forbidden shadows. The snow whipped around Sarah like a ghostly shroud as she trudged toward the school, the cold seeping deep into her bones. That old building loomed over Millstone, a grave marker of forgotten dreams and whispered horrors. They said it was haunted, but tonight, it felt alive. Every creak of the door sent chills racing down her spine, the air crackling with an ominous energy. She stepped inside. The fluorescent lights flickered, casting jagged shadows that twisted and turned like phantoms just out of sight. Here was a place where the past clung like a fog, where legends of lost children and dark secrets wove a tapestry of fear. The echoes of her footsteps in the empty hallways were the only sounds, but their rhythm felt off, like they were somehow being countered by a heartbeat beneath the school's cracked floors. Sarah pushed on, trying to swallow the building's eerie atmosphere along with her anxiety. Her kids, Will and Lily, had been restless lately, plagued by nightmares about a shadow that stalked them in their sleep. The thought tightened her chest. How could she protect them when she herself felt so trapped? Forcing herself deeper into the school's bowels, Sarah nearly jumped out of her skin as the lights flickered again, plunging her into a darkness that felt thick and alive. She stopped, her breath hitching in her throat. A shiver danced across her skin, a sensation of being watched. Her instincts screamed at her to turn back, to run, but she couldn't. She had to figure this out, had to keep her job, had to provide. The whispers returned, faint and elusive. They taunted her, weaving their way through her thoughts like ivy through stone. Just then, the thought of reaching out to the local police sprang to life. How foolish she'd been not to seek help earlier. Surely, someone could protect her family. But doubts knotted her stomach. It wasn't just the stress of unemployment. It was the history of this town, the stories best left untold. Those secrets could claw at anyone seeking to uncover them. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the night dragged on, Sarah's hands trembled against the mop, each stroke along the cold tile sending chills racing through her veins. Fatigue clawed at her, but when a rustle echoed from the halls, a new surge of adrenaline replaced her exhaustion. The shadows seemed to twist, lurking just beyond the reach of her vision, as if the very walls held their breath, waiting for her to discover something she wasn't meant to uncover. A picture hung crooked on the wall, its faded colors revealing a group of children who looked all too familiar. Pang struck her heart. Were these the faces her own children dreamt of, a twisted connection she wished to sever? Suddenly, a whisper drifted through the air like smoke. Help us, it cooed, sending Sarah's heart racing faster than she could comprehend. She stumbled back, fear branding itself in her mind. A presence coiled around her, thickening the air, as she felt the temperature dropping even lower. Panic swelled inside her. She could feel it creeping closer. At that moment, her worst fears coalesced into reality. A shadow flickered across her vision, a dark silhouette casting an icy dread that gripped her heart. Just as the fluorescent bulbs flickered and then died, plunging her into a suffocating blackness, a voice emerged, soft, sinister, and drenched in malice. Do you really think you can escape? Time stood still. Sarah stood frozen, breathless and terrified. But one thing was clear. The darkness that enveloped the school wasn't just a haunting, it was an omen. She had entered a world of betrayal and shadows, and now there was no turning back. With her children whispered into peril, what horrors awaited her in that chilling abyss? The silence enveloped her like a thick fog, each heartbeat reverberating in her ears. The darkness felt alive, pulsating around her, and the last flicker of light felt like a cruel joke. Sarah's instincts screamed for her to move, yet her feet seemed glued to the cold tile floor, frozen by a fear she couldn't comprehend. A soft rustle echoed again, this time directly behind her. Chills ran down her spine as she spun around, her eyes struggling to adjust to the oppressive void. With a trembling breath, she reached out, desperately hoping to find something solid to hold on to. But there was nothing, just emptiness. Suddenly, the whisper returned, sharper and more insistent. "Help us!" It was not just one voice now. It melded into a chorus, an urgent plea clawing at her soul. Panic clawed at her chest. She was not alone anymore. "Who is there?" She called out, her voice nearly drowned by the encroaching shadows, each word a frail attempt to assert her control. No answer came, only the suffocating silence and the awareness that she had stepped directly into something far beyond her comprehension. Sarah took a tentative step forward, straining to catch any flicker of movement, any breath of a presence. As she walked deeper into the void, the temperature plummeted. Her breath formed visible clouds in the air, and the walls seemed to close in, whispering secrets of long-lost despair. She felt a tug at her consciousness, the weight of history pressing down on her, as if the building itself was yearning for release. Then, in a flutter of the darkness, she saw them, a flicker of shapes, children with sunken eyes and hollow cheeks, staring back at her with a mixture of longing and fear, their faces twisted into silent screams, accusing and desperate. "Find us!" The voices came again, intertwining in a symphony of anguish. No, this was not right. She couldn't help them. How could she? The shadows loomed closer, and an icy finger brushed against her cheek, sending her heart racing. Dread filled her. What did they want? What had happened here? She stumbled. The overwhelming urge to flee wrestled against a primal need to uncover the truth. The school was alive, and it understood her fears. It reveled in them. "Get away from me!" she shouted, the raw force of her voice echoing back at her, mocking her resolve. But the shadows continued to pulse. They seemed almost to breathe, and with every strained heartbeat, the children's eyes seemed to grow narrower, their features sharpening into something sinister. "You have to find us?" Sarah shook her head, stumbling backward, but a sudden sound broke through the whispers, a crash somewhere down the hall. Instinctively, she turned. Was it a chance for escape, or a lure deeper into the trap? The pulse of the darkness quickened around her, pulling her closer to the horror she tried to evade. Clenching her teeth, she forced herself to move toward the sound. Each step felt like wading through molasses. The shadows clawed at her, whispering threats in a language only she could hear. The hall stretched like a bottomless pit, each second feeling like an eternity as she neared the source of the noise. A door creaked, slowly opening into complete darkness. A sliver of cold air wafted out, and for a moment, Sarah hesitated. The whispers crescendoed, urging her forward, while a deep instinct screamed for her to run. Should she venture inside? A sickening dread settled in her stomach as the temperature dropped even further. She took a deep breath, backed against the wall. "What are you hiding?" she whispered to herself, knowing full well the answer might just plunge her deeper into madness. With resolve blossoming amidst the chaos, Sarah stepped into the blackness. The door swung shut behind her with a resounding thud, and in that moment, all was silent. But lurking beyond the suffocating darkness, she felt a presence, a waiting, watching force. And as her heart raced, she knew the real horror was just beginning. What awaited her in this suffocating oblivion? A sharp click echoed in the stillness, shattering her momentary calm. A dim light sprung to life above her, casting an eerie glow that illuminated the walls, their peeling paint revealing shadows that looked like grasping fingers. A chill skittered down her spine. "Where am I?" Sarah whispered, the words trembling in the thick air. Her pulse raced, each beat a reminder that she was still alive, that she had willingly entered this trap. The whispers quieted, though the suffocating silence felt more oppressive, almost sentient. She stepped forward, the floor creaking beneath her weight. This room was small, cramped, and filled with furniture covered in white sheets. As she brushed one aside, the dust clouded her vision, but not before she saw what lay beneath. Old toys, faded photographs, the ghosts of a time when these children had laughter instead of despair. "Find us!" They weren't just voices anymore. They were becoming something more appealing, a weight pressing against her soul, demanding her attention. Suddenly, a loud crash erupted in the corner, and her instincts kicked. Sarah spun around, heart racing anew. A closet door swung open violently. The air thickened with tension, and she could almost hear the voices harmonizing, inching closer, as if waiting for her next move. She took a cautious step back, but something caught her eye. Among the clutter on the floor lay an old diary, its leather cover cracked and worn. Her curiosity piqued. Could this hold the answers she sought? With shaky hands, she picked it up. The first entry was hastily written, smudged, almost frantic. "We hide in the dark. They can't find us. We'll be safe." A sense of dread settled in her stomach. Who were they? Who was hiding? Was she one of them? The next pages told stories of laughter and innocence, but they quickly devolved into tales of fear and escape plans. The writing grew disjointed, crammed with words as if the author was racing against time. "The shadows are watching. They'll take us if we don't leave soon." Her breath came in ragged gasps. She heard it then, a soft patter, footsteps closing in. The whispers had returned, but this time they coiled around her heart like a vice. "Help us. Find us." Heart pounding in her chest, Sarah dropped the diary as the door behind her creaked open. She felt an overwhelming pull toward the crack of darkness spilling from the threshold. The silhouettes of the children beckoned, their gaunt faces anxious, desperate. "No," she gasped, stepping back, uncertainty clawing at her resolve. "I can't." The shadows seemed to thicken, swirling around her, disorienting and taunting. A deep growl rumbled through the air, sparking terror within her. It wasn't just the children she had to fear. Something darker had awoken in the depths of the school, and it was hungry. She needed to escape. She could feel it rising, the dark presence swelling with anger at her defiance. Breath hitching, Sarah bolted for the door, plunging into the darkness outside, unaware of what awaited in the corridor. The walls shuddered, a chorus of children's voices echoing in her mind, twisting, morphing into laughter that had turned to spiteful screams. "You have to find us." As she sprinted away, the footsteps behind her picked up speed, too close, too breathless. Panic surged with every stride, the darkness closing in. A door loomed ahead. Could it be a way out, or was it yet another trap? A mere heartbeat before she reached for the knob. The floor beneath her trembled. The shadows rippled, pulling the very air from her lungs as a voice, deeper now, hissed from the depths. "You will never escape." Sarah hesitated, and in that instant, everything went dark. She had to hurry. Was this a rescue or a descent into madness? As her fingers grazed the cold metal, she took a deep breath, ready for whatever lay on the other side. What waited next could either set her free or bind her forever. What would she find on the other side of the door? The door swung open, revealing a corridor drenched in darkness, the stale air thick with the scent of mold and decay. Sarah hesitated, the whispering shadows still clawing at her nerves. Her heart pounded against her ribcage as she stepped across the threshold. The door slammed shut behind her with a resonant thud, as if sealing her fate within the twisting hallways of despair. The low light from her surroundings flared to life as she jogged forward, the flickering bulbs above creating shifting forms that darted away in her peripheral vision. Each time she glanced sideways, she was met with empty classrooms, their windows shattered like broken dreams. She felt eyes on her, countless eyes tracking her movements through the haze of gloom. "Find us, help us," echoed in her mind, threading through the fabric of silence like a haunting melody. She quickened her pace, her breath hitching in her throat, desperate to outrun the oppressive feeling of being watched. A door to her right swung open with a creak, more inviting than threatening. Sarah glanced inside a classroom, once vibrant, now a graveyard of forgotten lessons. Broken desks lay strewn about, and peeling drawings clung to the walls, mocking her with memories. As she stepped further in, the chill factor heightened, and the whispers grew louder, menacing, wrapping around her. She spun around, instinctively reaching for the handle of the door. But nothing came, just the crawling silence. She gripped her arms to stop the tremors dancing through her body. "This isn't real," she muttered through clenched teeth. Can't be. Then it came again, a soft giggle, disembodied and sinister, mocking her fears. Another shadow flickered across her vision. A fleeting glimpse of white. Was it a dress? A child? Terror gnawed at her resolve as she turned abruptly, nearly tripping over a broken chair. She wasn't alone, and the blood in her veins turned as cold as the air around her. A door at the end of the hall opened with a slow, ominous creak, revealing nothing but an abyss. The whispers grew frantic, a cacophony of terrified voices overlapping, spiraling into chaos. Help us, help us! They urged her to move, to choose. Gulping down her panic, Sarah sprinted toward the end, each footfall echoing in the confined space. She reached the threshold, hesitating as her stomach churned with unease. Could she dive into the unknown? With wild determination, she leaped into the darkness, expecting something soft and yielding. Instead, she plunged into a room that was even darker than the hallway. The air inside was thick, suffocating her senses with a damp heaviness. No, she breathed, feeling the walls close in. But she couldn't stop now. She strained her ears for any sound, any clue, and somewhere in the silence, she heard it, a faint sobbing, echoing off unseen walls. It was a cry of desperation, chilling her to the bone. Please, help us. The voice was small, quivering, a child's voice that resonated through the void. It beckoned her forward, deeper into the black. Where are you? Sarah called, her voice barely above a whisper. The sobbing stopped. The silence returned but was laced with a weight that pressed down on her chest. And then she felt it, a presence, dark and twisted, slinking in the shadows around her. She wasn't just a visitor. She was intruding. A shiver crawled up her spine, and she took a hesitant step back. Suddenly, light burst forth, illuminating the room, and Sarah could see them. A circle of children, their eyes wide, hollow, filled with terror. They were trapped in a nightmare, a living echo of the past. You have to help us, they chorused, their faces drawn and paled as their arms stretched out toward her. She felt something else, darker and more sinister, rising in the room. A figure concealed in shadows stalked at the periphery, its eyes glowing with malice, a whisper now rumbling through her skull. You should have run now, you can never leave. Just as despair threatened to swallow her whole, Sarah's instincts kicked in again. Could she stand against the darkness? Or would she become part of their tragic tale? With desperation fueling her resolve, she took a step towards the children. Their cries grew louder, but the shadow surged forward, hungry for her essence. Choose quickly, it hissed. Sarah's heart raced as she stood torn between the living and the lingering dead. In the face of terror, the path loomed ahead, threatening to consume her everything. What would she sacrifice to escape this nightmare? Would she become their savior or join them forever in haunted silence? The shadow lunged, its presence a wave of cold that enveloped Sarah. She could feel it grab for her, fingers of darkness reaching, clawing. Panic surged, a primal instinct crying for her to run. But where? The children's outstretched hands trembled, desperation carved deep into their expressions. Help us, they pleaded, their voices blending into a tragic symphony that echoed against the walls. Stop! No! Sarah shouted, her voice cracking under the weight of her fear. Would she really sacrifice herself for these lost souls? The thought caught in her throat like a bitter lump. In that instant, a memory flickered to life. How she used to save others, her friends, her family, but this was different. The shadow paused, as if considering her hesitation. It crept closer, and she felt the air grow thin, cold as grave dirt. Choose, it hissed, the voice like 1,000 dry leaves rustling in the wind. Save them or save yourself. She couldn't breathe. The scent of decay filled her nostrils as the children's cries only grew more urgent. They were dying, trapped in this perpetual nightmare, while she stood at a crossroads, paralyzed by indecision. If she saved them, what would it cost her? What if her life became a part of this darkness forever? Please, one child wailed, her eyes shimmering with tears. We can't stay here. The pleading echoed in her mind, a haunting refrain that stirred something deep in her. Okay, okay. Sarah shouted over the cacophony, swallowing the ocean of dread that threatened to swallow her whole. She took a deep breath, focused on the children's fearful expressions. The outline of the shadow shifted, an almost sentient manifestation of hatred and despair that bared its teeth in a sinister grin. With resolve swelling within her, Sarah lunged forward. "I'll help you." The moment her hands clasped around the closest child's wrist, an electric pulse shot through her body. The air crackled, and warmth rushed into her fingertips, infusing her with a sense of purpose. But the shadow recoiled, shrieking, a sound that shattered the silence like glass breaking. "No, you cannot save them. They are mine." A sinister wave cascaded over her, pushing against her will. She felt it tugging at her, trying to unravel her spirit. The child in her grip squeezed harder, eyes digging into hers, and she felt the bond deepen, pulling her closer to the other children. Darkness whirled around them, dancing with rage, but Sarah pressed on, clutching their hands, ready to resist. "Stay with me," she urged, rallying them as the dim light flickered again, illuminating the horror in their faces. Each child's grip tightened, and their sobbing forged a bond, turning fear into strength. Together, they formed a circle, a fragile fortress of hope against the rising tide of despair. The shadow lurked just beyond, casting a sinister haze. Suddenly, without warning, the darkness swelled violently, charging towards Sarah and the children in a flurry of rage and darkness. "You cannot escape," it roared, the voices of the children blending into a roaring tempest. But Sarah had to believe they could. In that moment, she made a choice. "We will break this curse." Her voice rang with conviction, resonating through even the suffocating darkness. Together, but just as she spoke, the lights blinked out, plunging them into utter blackness. Sarah's heart beat like a war drum, adrenaline rushing through her veins as icy dread clutched at her throat. The children vanished from her sight, their soft gasps echoing into the void. She was alone, but for how long? With her pulse racing, she whispered into the darkness, "Where are you?" "Help us," echoed a familiar voice, but it was different now, tainted by something sinister. Sarah, a chilling recognition struck her. Not all voices may be those of the innocent. Something was waiting, lurking within the darkness, crafting its own choice for her. What if the real horror was yet to come? What if saving the children meant embracing something worse than death? Would she stand strong against this encroaching terror or surrender to darkness? The silence was oppressive, squeezing Sarah from all sides. Darkness snaked around her, thick and suffocating. She pressed her hands against her ears to block out the twisted whisper that clawed at her sanity. The children's voices had vanished, warped into the shadows like smoke swallowed by fire. Breathing became an effort, each gasp a reminder that something was watching. Sarah, the voice emerged again, softer this time, almost a caress, a false promise that twisted in her gut. Still unsure if it was one of the children or something much darker, she forced herself to take a step forward, heart hammering as she moved deeper into the void. "Who's there?" she called, her voice a brittle echo lost in the vastness. But it felt foolish, inviting whatever lurked within. "Show yourself." A shiver raced down her spine. Suddenly, a flicker of light appeared, a pale glow breaking through the darkness. It sputtered like a candle caught in a draft. Fear prickled at her skin as she stepped closer, the light pulsing with urgency. Shadows contorted around her, warping as if they were alive, hungering. "Please, help us," came the voice again, almost a chant now, a dire entreaty that wrapped around her like a shroud. The cadence was hypnotic, drawing her forward. "Is it you, kids?" Sarah hesitated, dread curling in her stomach. What if it was a trap? What if she was being lured deeper into an abyss that offered no return? But the flickering light, there was something pure in it, pushing against the darkness. Sarah, it spoke her name as if it belonged to an old friend, urging her on. She took another step, the ground solidifying under her feet. From the corners of her vision, shadows swirled threateningly. "Get away from me," she shouted, feeling strength surge but eroding as the light began to dim. The shadows sensed her doubt, slithering closer. Then, the light flickered one last time, illuminating the glimmering faces of the children, ghostly and pale. Their eyes were wide, desperate. "It's okay," one child whispered, and recognition hit her hard. It wasn't a simple plea, it was hollow, unnatural. They were not free but bound to this horror. "We need help from you." "No." Panic surged again, a cold wave crashing over her. She knew the truth, they were not just victims. They were tied to this darkness, and the very presence she hoped to vanquish was now echoed in their tainted voices. With trembling hands, she raised her own, shielding herself. "You've been taken. You're not real," but doubt hung in the air like a thick fog, choking her will. Shadows swirled around her, creeping closer, as if eager to consume her soul. "They are mine." It was the voice of the darkness, visceral and raw, dripping with malice. "Feed on their despair." The pulsing light stuttered as her vision blurred. Sarah turned, desperate to escape, only to find herself trapped in a swirling void of anguish, the laughter of the children morphing into shrieks that echoed like haunting specters of her past. "You are the choice, Sarah. Save them, or let them become your nightmare." She stumbled back, eyes wide with fear as shadows clawed at her, ripping at the bonds that tied her to her own soul. The darkness lunged at her, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah felt its cold grip tighten around her heart. Then she saw it, a shimmer in the corner of the room, a sliver of hope breaking through the agony. A door, warped and splintering but ajar, beckoning her. "Go." A voice thundered through her fractured thoughts. "You must choose now." With all her strength, she surged toward the door, heart racing, and with every ounce of will she had left, she dove through, hoping to escape this torment. But as she crossed the threshold, the world shifted again. She landed hard on solid ground, but it wasn't over. With trembling hands, she pushed herself up, ready to face whatever haunted this realm. Behind her, the door slammed shut with a resonating thud, and darkness shifted in the shadows, teasing her senses. "Welcome back, Sarah." The words slithered through the air, sultry and sinister. What awaited her now? Had she truly escaped, or had she only stepped into something worse? Sarah stood on the precipice of a new nightmare, terrors looming ahead. What horrors would she have to confront next? The ground beneath her felt alive, pulsing and shifting like a heartbeat. Sarah pressed her palms against the cold, damp floor, trying to steady her racing mind. The room was dim, illuminated only by a sickly greenish glow spilling from cracks in the walls. A chill crept through the air, sinking into her bones. "You're back where you belong," the voice purred, oozing out from the shadows surrounding her. It was everywhere and nowhere, like smoke wrapping around her throat. "You had choices, remember? But now you are part of the darkness." Fear cut through her like ice. Every instinct screamed to flee. She turned slowly, scanning her surroundings. The walls were grimed with age and despair, paintings hanging crookedly, their faces contorted in silent screams. Each one felt alive, their eyes dull yet following her every movement. "Stop it!" she cried, her voice a fragile plea against the weight of the silence closing in on her. But deep down, she felt the truth of it. The darkness was relentless, hungry, and it reveled in her fear. Suddenly, a figure darted past her periphery, small and shadowy. Her heart leaped. It was one of the children. "Wait!" Sarah shouted, scrambling to her feet. She took a step forward but stumbled, pain shooting through her ankle. The figure had vanished, swallowed by the shadows. "Sarah," it echoed again. But this time it was different, a sinister blend of familiar and foreign. The laughter of the children twisted into something ghastly, echoing all around her. She clutched her head, fighting the siren call to surrender to the darkness. "Why don't you come play?" the voice whispered, dripping like honey laced with poison. "We're all waiting for you, forever waiting." Panic surged anew in her chest. In her mind, she could see glimpses of the children's faces so full of innocence once, now marred by terror. She couldn't let them down again. They were lost, like leaves caught in an autumn wind, swirling without direction. "Stop this. I won't give in," she shouted, clenching her fists. But the laughter rose, mockingly, echoing off the walls like a haunting melody. Every note sent fresh chills down her spine. Then, light flickered at the far end of the room, a warmer glow struggling against the encroaching darkness. Heart pounding, she hobbled towards it, driven by a flicker of hope. With each step, shadows thrashed angrily, as if trying to drag her back into the void. She stumbled, the malice palpable, 1,000 cold fingers reaching out for her. "Leave her," a voice rang out, sharper than the others. A child, no older than 7, appeared at the edge of the light, eyes wide and shining. "She must come with us. The light will protect her." "Who are you?" Sarah gasped, torn between terror and the need for connection. But before the child could answer, the shadows hissed, more furious than ever. "Don't listen to them, Sarah. They'll trap you here." The ground shook as the walls began to close in, the light pulsing rapidly like a dying star. Time twisted, each second stretching into an eternity. "What do I do?" she screamed, feeling the darkness tug at her, pulling her backwards into despair. "Choose," the child shouted, voice laced with urgency. "Choose before it takes you." Sarah's heart pounded harder, caught between the flickering light and the deepening shadows. The very air pressed against her, thick with dread. The choice loomed before her, a path shrouded in uncertainty and danger. One led towards the shrill cries of lost souls, the other towards the faint glow of salvation. She reached out, breathless, ready to choose. The room erupted in chaos. Shadows shrieked and the light blinked violently, threatening to vanish. "What will you choose, Sarah? Time is running out." Every heartbeat felt like a countdown, and with the world spiraling around her, one thought haunted her mind: was there truly a way out? Or was this darkness her final resting place? Then, the whispers grew louder, and she could almost hear what lay waiting on the other side. What happens next would seal her fate forever. The chaos swelled, the shadows flickering like angry flames, consuming everything in their path. Sarah's breath came in short gasps, her chest tightening with dread. The child's frightened face twisted in the light, the urgency in those innocent eyes gripping her like a vice. Time warped around her, every second dripping with despair. "Choose! Choose!" The child's voice rang out as the shadows coiled like serpents, ready to strike. They screamed in agony, their whispers warping into snarls of rage, demanding her attention. Sarah felt their cold tendrils brush against her skin, urging her to succumb to their malignant embrace. With her heart pounding like a war drum, she strained to see the warmth of the light. But the glow was flickering, stuttering against the violent shadows. In that moment, she was frozen, caught between the light's salvation and the darkness's grip. The air turned thick and stifling as the hands of the void clawed at her. "You must pick, Sarah," the child pleaded, panic flooding their voice. "We can't hold them off forever. Please, just tell me what to do," she cried, wild desperation flooding through her veins. Her soul ached as she felt the children's presence surrounding her. What had happened to them? Did they choose incorrectly? "Follow me." The child stretched a small hand toward her, reaching through the edges of the glimmering light. Hope surged within Sarah, pushing back against her trepidation. But the darkness writhed around her, furious at the spark ignited by her will. "Join us. You'll be one of us forever," came the seductive whisper from the shadows. It was intoxicating, almost comforting. Years of searching for connection flooded her as the malevolent voice promised peace, freedom from fear. But a memory flashed, one of laughter and joy amid the children's faces that glowed not with fear, but with hope. She couldn't abandon them again. "No!" Sarah screamed, summoning every ounce of strength. She turned her back on the darkness, the decision splintering through her like glass. "I choose the light." With that declaration, the room erupted into blinding brilliance, the shadows recoiling as if scorched. The light surged, illuminating the walls and unveiling their grotesque features, the contorted faces of anguished souls, their mouths wide in terror. It was a true reflection of the darkness she was fighting against, their screams rising into a cacophony. Sarah shielded her eyes, heart racing as she took a step forward. The child at the edge of the light smiled, hope revived in their eyes. "Then come to me." But just as she moved, the ground beneath her cracked like thunder. The walls twisted, splintering around them, shadows thrashing in defiance. "You won, escape," the voice howled, rising to a fever pitch. It became a tangible force, slamming into her, knocking the wind from her lungs. Desperation surged again, and with renewed determination, Sarah sprinted toward the light. She could feel the darkness clawing at her back, wrapping around her legs like chains, trying to pull her down. But she pressed on, fueled by the faces of the lost children, their desperate cries urging her onward. Almost there, the child called, the brightness dazzling. Just a few more steps. She could almost feel the warmth wrapping around her safety, family, hope, but the shadows surged forward, a tidal wave of sorrow and despair. Pain ripped through her ankle again, the darkness latching on fiercely. She stumbled and fell, the edge of the light wavering, flickering. Sarah, the child, grasped her outstretched hand, the light pulsing with warmth. But the shadows screeched, their pain resonating into her very being, vibrating through her bones. Every thought swirled in a maelstrom of horror. "You'll lose them all," the whispers shrieked, promising her the fate of the children. Twisted and condemned to darkness, Sarah felt herself pulled backward. She grasped the child's hand tighter, fighting to keep the connection. The light brightened once more, but the shadows moved like a living nightmare. No longer friends, but predators hunting their prey. "Let go of me," she screamed, her voice echoing through the chaos. Her heart raced. Would she choose the light and escape, or would she fall forever into the darkness? The room shuddered violently, walls cracking even more, the child's grip slipping. And then a sudden flash of clarity pierced through the madness. "Look to the faces," came the command, the child pointing toward the mural of screaming souls entangled in the wall. What did it mean? The room shifted, shadows screaming as the light pulsed desperately. Would this revelation be her salvation or her doom? The answer seemed to hang in the balance as the shadows lunged, ready to devour her whole. The shadows lunged, twisting around Sarah like a storm, their frigid tendrils wrapping tighter with each heartbeat. Panic gripped her throat, clawing at her like a wild animal desperate for escape. The child's face shimmered with fear and resolve, but the pull of the darkness was relentless. "Look closer," the child shouted over the howling chaos. "Focus on the faces." For a moment Sarah was torn. The shadows screamed louder, trying to drown out the child's voice, but she fought to shift her gaze to the mural. What did they want her to see? As she squinted through the bright chaos, the faces on the wall became clearer. They were not just screaming. They were crying out for something: justice, freedom, or perhaps a final release from their torment. And then she noticed it. Their eyes were not filled with despair but with a flicker of hope. "Be brave, Sarah. They can help us," the child urged, their grip tightening around her hand. Mustering all her strength, Sarah focused on the mural. As if in response, the faces turned toward her. A cacophony of whispers and cries surged from them, forming a bridge between her and the shadows. She felt their pain wash over her, mingling with the incandescent light that surrounded her. "Bring us into the light," they yelled, their voices now a desperate chorus. In that instant, clarity pierced through her fear. This was more than just a choice for her salvation. It was a plea for her to act, to unveil the truth buried within the shadows. "Okay, I'll help you," she shouted, still holding tightly to the child's hand. Feeling the shadows writhe beneath her, she gathered her courage. "I choose to save you." As if responding to her declaration, the light surged violently, and the mural rippled, becoming animated. The faces leaped from the wall, spilling forth into the room like liquid stars, each one a flickering specter of its former self. The shadows recoiled, screaming in rage and horror at the surge of light. "No, you'll doom us all." But Sarah felt their sorrow echoing within her. and she realized that the darkness itself was the consequence of lost choices, a prison born from regret. "Stand with me," she shouted, emboldened by a surge of power. "Together, let the light overcome." She turned her body toward the storm of darkness, raising her free hand high, channeling the energy of the child and the newly freed spirits. The room glowed, the light pulsating like a heartbeat, igniting the air all around her. With a furious howl, the darkness surged, collapsing upon her, its claws grinding into her flesh. "You belong to us. You cannot escape." But Sarah spoke through her pain, focusing on the faces of those she sought to save. "Your pain ends here. You have the power." The flickering light erupted, brightening the darkness until it dimmed to a shadow of its former self. The child beside her stood tall, reflecting the energy flowing through Sarah's connection. Then the mural's faces erupted into a vibrant swirl of colors and sounds, melding with the brightness around her, and the shadows shrieked in agony. Suddenly, the light cascaded forward, engulfing Sarah and the child completely, shot through with the ghostly visages of the freed souls. But the darkness writhed against it, desperate to reclaim its grip. As the blinding barrier enshrouded them, Sarah felt the world around her shift, twisting and collapsing into a vortex of colors: light against dark, reality against shadow. And just like that, silence fell. Then came the voice again, low and contemptuous, yet distant as if echoing from another realm. "You think you can win? This battle is far from over." The ground shook beneath her, the light flickering precariously, its strength waning. With one final pulse, Sarah realized she had made a choice far too critical. She had awakened something more than mere shadows, something ancient. The question screamed through her mind. What had she just unleashed? The darkness was no longer an entity racked with rage. It felt like a living, breathing shadow with intent, an ancient force awakening from its long slumber. Sarah gasped as the brilliance of the light pulsed around her, its warmth invigorating and yet tenuous. She felt the child beside her squeeze her hand, their small fingers wrapping around hers with an unyielding resolve. "Stay strong," they urged, their voice cutting through the looming dread encasing them. Faces from the mural floated around them, whispering encouragement as they began to coalesce into a shimmering barrier that pushed against the darkness. But the shadows hissed, resentful, recoiling but relentless, ready to howl back into her heart. "There's more to this," Sarah thought, her mind racing. In that moment, all the fragments of fear, desperation, and hope fused together, and a new clarity settled over her. She had felt their agony, the children's collective sorrow, but also their lingering strength. It wasn't merely about her escape. It was about confronting this darkness together. She understood now the only way out was forward, united against the malevolence that sought to consume them. "Let us light the way," Sarah shouted, empowering her voice. The glow expanded, a brilliant flash, and Sarah called on the spirit of the children. Together, feel the strength of each other. Their combined energy surged, igniting every ounce of determination in her. The murals glowed vividly, reshaping into vibrant depictions of laughter and warmth, recalling memories shared. Suddenly, the darkness convulsed, pushing against the light, trying to batter its way through. But Sarah stood firm, bolstered by the child's steadfast grip. With every pulse of their combined energy, they glimpsed deeper into the shadows. Something ancient stirred, a fractured fragment of memory long lost, a manifestation of fear that had ruled for too long. "Release your hold," Sarah yelled, commanding the warmth that surged through her veins. The shadows writhed violently but began to peel back, revealing faces now resolute, bolstered by shared sorrow and solidarity. She felt their pain and their release intertwined, a tether between them that pulled tight like a rope ready to break. With a fierce determination, she took one step forward, dragging the child along, whispering, "You're free now." In that moment, an explosion of light erupted from her fingertips, cascading in waves, washing over every corner of darkness. Each shadow that faded away brought forth a child's carefree laughter, cascading like chimes on a gentle breeze. The oppressive weight lifted, replaced with a joyous glow that filled the air. The room shimmered, colors splashing to life, illuminating forgotten corners, flushing away the years of despair. The call of the darkness faltered, a last attempt to pull them back, yet Sarah pressed on. "You're just echoes of fear. You have no power here," she declared, her voice a clarion of defiance. With overwhelming brilliance, she charged forward, the child by her side, and the others rallied around them, forging strength from their unity. And as their hands inched closer to the shadows, the darkness let out one final anguished roar, dismantling in waves against their combined light. "Free them," she shouted, each word ringing with triumphant conviction. The energy surged through her, rushing toward the shadows, overwhelming them, shattering their oppressive hold forever. A swift current of warmth spiraled back around, enveloping all of them, igniting latent dreams and desires in the air that wrapped around like a comforting embrace. Just like that, silence fell once again, but this time, it felt different, softer, lighter. The air hummed with a vibrant energy, swirling polychromatic lights that danced around like fireflies. The ghostly faces of the children began to materialize into joyful reflections. No longer bound, they twinkled with gratitude, laughter echoing like songs of liberation. Sarah stepped back, breathless but exhilarated, as ethereal outlines of children took a leap toward the light. She felt her heart swell. They had done it. "Thank you." Their voices chimed, pure and bright, wrapping her in a cascade of warmth that melted the remnants of fear still lingering in her chest. But moments later, the light faded into the gentle glow of dawn. Sarah stood outside the school, the weight of the night lifting as she stumbled into the crisp morning. The sun rose softly in the distance, coaxing the shadows away. Birds chirped with a newfound cheer as cheers of joy rang from the school's heart, a tangible embrace of acceptance. "Mama!" Will and Lily rushed toward her, their faces beaming, alive and unafraid. The nightmares had vanished, leaving behind echoes of laughter. Sarah pulled them close, feeling their warmth seep into her soul, filling every empty space. "I'm here. I'm so sorry," she whispered, their tugging her back into reality, a reality that shimmered with hope. As the sun broke through, she realized the torment of the night had dissolved, leaving the school stained with signs of life once more, a vessel now free from the grasp of horror. But deep down, she also knew the battle was pivotal. Shadows lingered, but light prevailed. Just as light could reclaim, darkness could return. Only this time, she wouldn't face it alone. Together, they would keep the memories alive, the laughter, the joy, and the promise to fight against the shadows that dared to lurk in the dark. With renewed purpose, Sarah looked into the horizon, her heart swelling. The old building stood behind her but felt alive, bursting with tales of healing. With her children by her side, she would ignite hope and lead them bravely into the dawn of new beginnings. So, what does it take to face your darkness? Sometimes, it takes just a flicker of light and a heartbeat of courage to change everything. Before we finish, there's something vital to share. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss out on any thrilling stories that lie ahead. Smash that like button now. It's your way to feed the algorithm and help us thrive. Fill the comments section with your thoughts and theories. We want to hear how you felt about this wild ride. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need this uplifting conclusion in their lives. The support of true fans is what keeps this channel alive.